My dad skipped my wedding. But when my $580 million hotel chain hit the news, Dad texted, "The morning of my wedding, I woke up before the alarm. The room was quiet in that way hotel rooms get before staff starts moving in the halls. The curtains were half open, letting in a thin strip of pale light from the river outside. My dress hung from the closet door wrapped in plastic. On the desk, my phone lay face down. I already knew what it didn't say. My dad hadn't called. He hadn't texted. There was no 'proud of you,' no 'I'll be there,' not even a thumbs-up reaction to the photo my sister had sent him the night before of the place cards lined up in neat rows. I didn't check anyway. I got out of bed and made coffee with the little machine by the sink. It sputtered and hissed like it was doing me a favor. I stood there in my robe, watching the steam rise, thinking about how many times I'd pictured him walking me down the aisle. Not in some movie way, just him beside me, steady, familiar, the way he used to walk me into my first job interview, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder before he let go and said, "You've got this." That version of him felt like it belonged to someone else's life now. My fiancé, Daniel, knocked softly and cracked the door. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Coffee's terrible." "Want some?" He smiled, came in and kissed my forehead. He didn't ask about my dad. He didn't need to. Everyone already knew. The venue was a converted greenhouse on the edge of the city. Glass walls, climbing vines, long wooden tables set under strings of warm lights. By noon, my mother was moving between tables with a clipboard. My sister was adjusting place settings, and my friends were pretending not to stare at the empty chair in the front row. My dad's chair, he'd said, 2 weeks earlier, over a rushed phone call. "I've got something big that weekend. Investors flying in." "You understand how this works," I'd said. "It's my wedding." He'd paused, just long enough for me to hope. Then he said, "Exactly. It's one day. This is my future." He liked to talk about his future a lot, usually when it involved someone else stepping aside. Growing up, he had a way of making his choices sound like lessons. When he missed my high school graduation, it was teaching me independence. When he didn't come to my college move-in, it was preparing me for the real world. When he skipped my first business pitch competition, it was letting me stand on my own. The story was always the same. If he wasn't there, it was for my own good. So when he skipped my wedding, people nodded like it made sense. "He's a busy man," my aunt said, leaning in as she fixed my veil. "That's just how successful people are." I smiled and thanked her. What I didn't say was that my dad wasn't that successful. Not anymore. He still dressed the part. Tailored jackets, expensive watch, the kind of car that made valet attendants stand a little straighter. But the company he talked about at every family dinner, the consulting firm, the portfolio of clients, had quietly shrunk over the last few years. Contracts ended, partnerships dissolved. The office he used to boast about downtown moved to a smaller building near the highway. He never mentioned those parts. He just talked louder. I walked down the aisle without him. Daniel was waiting at the end, hands clasped, face open and steady. The guests stood. The lights reflected in the glass walls, and for a moment, everything felt simple. The words we said to each other were ours. The way we laughed when Daniel stumbled over a line was ours. That day belonged to us, not to the empty chair. At the reception, my sister gave a toast. My mom cried. Daniel's father welcomed me into their family with a warmth that didn't come with conditions. People danced. Plates were cleared. Someone spilled red wine on the floor and apologized like they'd committed a crime. I didn't check my phone all night. Not because I was waiting, because I wasn't. The next morning, we left for a short honeymoon up the coast. On the drive, my sister sent me a screenshot. It was a group chat I wasn't in. My dad had written, "Hope the wedding went well." Had a huge meeting. Couldn't step away. You know how it is. Below it, my aunt had replied with a heart emoji. I stared at the message for a long moment, then put my phone back in my bag. Daniel glanced over. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just family stuff." He nodded. He didn't push. That was one of the things I liked about him. He didn't demand explanations. He trusted the way I handled things. We spent 2 days by the ocean. I read. Daniel swam. We ate at small places where the menus were handwritten on chalkboards. At night we talked about where we wanted to live, what we wanted our work to look like in 5 years. When we got back, my phone felt heavier than usual. Emails had stacked up. I ran a hospitality company. Not in name, at least not publicly. My title on the website was Operations Director. My email signature didn't list founder or owner. That was intentional. I'd built it quietly. It started with one small hotel I bought with a loan, a grant, and a year of not paying myself. I learned booking systems, renovation schedules, zoning laws, staffing logistics. I slept in the office more than once. When something broke, I fixed it or found someone who could. I didn't tell my dad any of that. When the second property opened, I sent him a photo. He replied with a thumbs up. When the fifth opened, I invited him to the ribbon cutting. He said he had a conference. By the time we reached 10, I stopped updating him. The company grew under a holding name that didn't have my last name on it. Investors came in, a board formed. We expanded into other cities, then other countries. The valuation climbed in increments that didn't feel real until a banker said the number out loud and slid a document across a table. 580 million. It wasn't a headline yet. It was just paperwork. That Monday after the honeymoon, I walked into the main office and sat down at my desk. My assistant handed me a printed article from a business site. "Embargo lifts Thursday," she said. "They're running the feature. They want your photo." I read the headline. Quiet Hospitality Group Disrupts Boutique Hotel Market with Global Expansion.
My name was in the subheading.
I nodded and handed it back. Okay. That afternoon, my dad called. I watched the phone ring until it stopped. He called again an hour later, and he texted, "Saw something about your company in a trade newsletter. Didn't realize you were doing this well. We should talk." I didn't respond, not because I was angry, because I wanted to be precise. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open. I pulled up old emails, old messages, calendar entries. I started a folder and named it with the date of my wedding. Inside, I saved screenshots of every time he'd canceled, every message where he'd turned my milestones into background noise, every time he'd asked for introductions to my contacts, or for advice that turned into him pitching himself as the expert in a room I'd built. I wasn't planning anything yet. I was just organizing. Daniel came in, set 2 plates of food on the table, and looked at the screen. "Work stuff? Family stuff?" I said. He sat down across from me. "You don't have to solve it tonight." "I know," I said. "I'm not." I closed the laptop. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my dad. "Proud of you. Always knew you'd do something big." I read it once. Then I turned the phone face down and left it on the table. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain anything back. I just let the silence sit there, doing its work. The article went live at 6 a.m. on Thursday. By 6:07, my phone started vibrating across the kitchen counter. I didn't touch it. I finished my coffee. I packed my bag. I walked Daniel to the door and kissed him goodbye. Only when the apartment was quiet again did I turn the phone over. 23 notifications. Most were congratulations. Former colleagues, investors, a few old friends from school who hadn't known what I did for a living until my name appeared under a headline. There were also 3 missed calls from my dad, and a message he'd sent at 6:02 a.m. "This is incredible. Why didn't you tell me? We need to catch up. There are people I should introduce you to." I read it, then opened the article again. The photo they'd chosen was from a site visit in Lisbon. I was standing in a half-finished lobby, wearing a hard hat and a blazer, pointing at a blueprint with a project manager beside me. The caption listed my full name and title, founder and CEO. It was the first time those words had appeared publicly. At the office, the mood was different. People were smiling a little more openly. A few junior managers stopped by my desk just to say they'd sent the article to their parents. The board chair forwarded me a note from a European investor who wanted to talk expansion. At 9:30, my assistant said, "Your father is online too." I looked at my calendar. Then at the folder on my desktop, the one named with my wedding date. "Send him to voicemail," I said. She hesitated. "He says it's urgent." "Everything is," I replied. I went back to a call with our regional director in Barcelona. My dad left a message. He didn't sound angry. He sounded energized. "Hey, kiddo! I saw the piece!" "This is big. I've been talking to a couple of people this morning. Old contacts." There might be some real opportunities here. Give me a call when you get a chance. By lunch, he'd emailed and subject line, proud father. He wrote about how he'd always believed in my potential, how he'd made sacrifices so I could learn to be independent. He mentioned casually that he had lunch scheduled the following week with a private equity group and that it could be mutually beneficial if I joined. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to my personal account and saved it in the folder. That afternoon, my sister texted, "Dad is telling everyone he helped you get started. He says, you used his business connections." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I asked, "Who did he tell?" She sent a voice note. I listened to it in my office, door closed. "He was at Aunt Maria's. Some cousins were there. He was talking about how you learned everything from him and how he introduced you to the right people early on." I didn't say anything. It just felt weird. I thanked her and ended the call. I pulled up the earliest bank statements from the first hotel, the loan documents, the grant approval email, the name of the community development officer who'd signed off on my application. None of it had my dad's name on it. I didn't feel angry.
I felt alert. The following week, he escalated.
He started tagging me on LinkedIn posts, articles about entrepreneurship, quotes about family legacy. Under one he wrote, "Proud to see my daughter carrying on the business mindset." People liked the comment. A few congratulated him. A local business podcast reached out to my office asking if he'd be interested in joining me for an episode about intergenerational success. My assistant forwarded me the email with a question mark. I replied with one word, no. That Friday, I got a calendar invite from my dad. "Lunch, Tuesday, downtown." I declined it. 10 minutes later, my mom called. "He's just excited," she said. "He feels left out. You could meet him halfway."
I met him halfway at my wedding,
I said. There was a pause on the line. "I'm not trying to start anything," I added. "I'm just not changing my schedule." She sighed. "You've always been stubborn." I didn't correct her. On Monday morning, my assistant handed me a printed guest list for an upcoming industry conference in New York. We were hosting a private dinner for operators and investors, 40 people, carefully curated. I scanned the names. My dad's name was there, invited by someone else. I circled it with a pen and handed the list back. "Remove him." She nodded, no questions asked. That night, he texted, "Got an invite to your event in NYC. Looks impressive. We should sit together." I didn't reply. The next day, he posted a photo on Facebook. It was an old picture of us from when I was in college, standing in front of a campus building. The caption read, "From helping her move into her dorm to watching her build an empire." And proud dad moments. Comments poured in, people telling him what a great father he was. I took a screenshot. I added it to the folder. That evening, I opened a new document and started a timeline. Dates, events, messages, public posts. Not opinions, just facts. The deeper I went, the clearer the pattern became. Every time my work crossed into public view, he appeared beside it. Not privately, publicly, attaching himself where he hadn't been present when it was quiet, small, or uncertain. I thought about the wedding chair again, how empty it had looked in all the photos. 2 weeks later, my dad showed up at my office. "No call, no appointment." The receptionist buzzed me. "Your father is here." I looked at the clock. I had a board meeting in 15 minutes. "Send him up," I said. He walked in like he owned the place. Took in the glass walls, the city view, the long table with screens at each end. "Nice setup," he said. "You've done well for yourself. Sit," I said. He did, leaning back in the chair. "So, why all the radio silence?" "I've been working," I said. He laughed. "Always the same. You get that from me." I didn't respond. He leaned forward. "Listen, I've been telling people about you. There's a lot of interest. We could do something together. Maybe I come on as an advisor. It would look good. Family story. Investors love that. Do you have hospitality experience?" I asked. He waved a hand. Business is business. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. It was the timeline. I didn't explain it. I just let him look. His smile faded just slightly. "What's this?" he asked. "Dates," I said. Messages, posts, absences. He leaned back again. You're being dramatic. I'm being accurate. He stood up. I don't know what you think you're proving. I'm your father. Of course I talk about you. Talking isn't the same as showing up, I said. He shook his head. You always had a chip on your shoulder. I closed the laptop. I have a meeting. He left without saying goodbye. That night, my mom texted me. He's upset. He feels like you're shutting him out. I typed and deleted 3 replies before sending 1. I'm not shutting him out. I'm just not letting him speak for me. A few days later, an email came in from the same private equity group my dad had mentioned weeks earlier. They wanted a meeting. The signature at the bottom of the message caught my eye. It was the name of the person my dad had once claimed as his closest contact. I checked the CC line. My dad was copied. I stared at the screen. Then I forwarded the email to my personal account and added it to the folder. That night, I went back to the earliest files I had, not just about my company, about his. Old public records, business registrations, a dissolved LLC, a lawsuit from a former partner that I'd vaguely remembered hearing about when I was younger. I found the court documents. They told a story he never had. Late, just before midnight, I found it. A financial disclosure from the lawsuit. It listed debts, defaults, settlements, and a clause that explained why he'd been chasing advisory roles and introductions so aggressively for the last few years. He wasn't building a legacy. He was trying to patch a sinking one. I sat back in my chair and looked at the folder on my desktop. It wasn't just a collection anymore. It was a map, and I knew exactly where the next public stop was going to be. The conference in New York, where he thought he had an invitation, where he thought he'd finally get to stand beside me, in front of the right people, under the right lights.
I didn't change anything. I didn't warn him.
I just booked my flight and let the schedule move forward, exactly as planned. The conference was held at a restored theater in Midtown, all velvet curtains and polished brass, the kind of place designed to make people feel important the moment they step through the doors. I arrived early.
Not to make an entrance, to watch the room settle.
Staff moved between tables setting name cards. A sound technician tested the microphones on the small stage at the front. The private dining area in the back, our dinner space, was roped off with a simple sign that read, "Invitation only." My dad wasn't there yet. I took my seat at a round table near the side of the room, close enough to the stage to hear everything, far enough not to be the focal point. A few operators I knew stopped by, shook my hand, congratulated me again on the article. I thanked them and kept the conversation on their projects, their expansions, their staffing challenges. At 10:17 a.m., my assistant leaned down beside me. "He's in the lobby?" I nodded. "Let him in." She didn't ask why. He walked in like he belonged to the place. New suit. Same watch. He paused just inside the door, scanning the room, spotting familiar faces, adjusting his posture before approaching anyone. He saw me and smiled wide, lifting a hand in a small wave, like we were in on something together. I gave him a polite nod and went back to my notes. He made his way through the room, introducing himself. "I'm her father," I heard him say to a group of investors near the coffee station. "She gets her drive from me." They laughed. Lightly, the way people do when they don't know how to respond but don't want to be rude. The morning sessions began. Panels about sustainable development, financing models, emerging markets. I took notes. Asked 2 questions from the floor, both about labor retention strategies in high-growth regions. My dad sat 3 rows back, checking his phone, occasionally leaning over to whisper to whoever was beside him. At lunch, he found his way to my table. "So," he said, setting his plate down without asking. "Quite a crowd." "You've done well." "Eat," I said. "The chicken's better than it looks." He laughed. "Always practical." "That's for me." I didn't respond. He lowered his voice.
Listen, tonight's dinner?
"I want to make a toast. Just something small. People should hear the family side of the story." I took a sip of water. "It's a closed dinner. I'm invited," he said. "By who?" He hesitated. "Does it matter?" "It does," I said. He straightened. "You're really going to play this game?" I set my glass down. "I didn't invite you." He stared at me. You'd embarrass your own father like that? In front of all these people? I'm not planning to embarrass anyone, I said. I'm planning to host my guests. He pushed his chair back. We'll see. The afternoon moved quickly. At 3:45, my phone buzzed. A message from my assistant. Security says he's asking about the dinner list. I replied, let him ask. At 5:30, the main hall cleared. The staff began setting the back room. White tablecloths, simple centerpieces, printed menus with our logo at the top. The sign at the rope was still there. Invitation only. I stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. Board members, regional directors, 2 partners from the private equity group. The woman whose name had been on the email my dad was copied on. She shook my hand. Good to finally meet in person. I've heard a lot about you. From who? I asked. She smiled. Your father, actually. He reached out after the article. Said he played a role in building your network. I nodded. Did he? She tilted her head. That's what I was hoping to clarify. I gestured toward the room. We'll have time. At 6:02, my dad appeared at the rope sack. The security staffer looked at his tablet, then at me. He's not on the list, the staffer said, neutral. My dad laughed. Of course I am. She's my daughter. The staffer looked at me again. I stepped forward. He's not invited to the dinner. The conversation around us quieted, just enough for a few nearby guests to notice. My dad's smile tightened. You're doing this now? Yes, I said. He leaned in. You think this makes you look good? I'm not thinking about how it looks, I said. I'm thinking about who's in the room. People were watching now, not openly. But enough. The private equity partner stood a few feet away, pretending to study the menu. My dad lowered his voice. You owe me this, after everything I did for you.
I met his eyes.
Name one thing. He opened his mouth, closed it. Security shifted their weight. My dad straightened and raised his voice slightly. This is unbelievable. I come all this way to support you, and you shut me out? A few heads turned. I kept my tone even. This is a professional event. I didn't invite you. He laughed sharp. Professional. Right. Without me, you wouldn't even be here. The room went quiet enough that the words landed. I didn't respond. I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim folder. Not the whole file, just one document. I handed it to the private equity partner. This is the loan agreement for my first property, I said. Signed in 2014. No co-signers. No advisors. No family involvement. She took it, surprised, and flipped through the first page. My dad stared at me. What are you doing? I turned to the small group that had gathered without meaning to. There's been some confusion about how my company started, I said. I'd like to clear that up. The security staffer stepped back, giving space. I took out my phone and opened the timeline, not to read it, to let them see the dates. My dad's face went pale. This isn't the place, he said. I nodded. You're right! It's not! I turned back to security. You can walk him out. The staffer placed a hand lightly near my dad's elbow. He didn't move at first. He looked at the people around him, the investors, the operators, the woman from the email. Then he laughed again, but it didn't sound the same. You think a few papers erase a lifetime? He said. I didn't answer. He shook off the staffer's hand and walked toward the exit on his own. As the door closed behind him, the room stayed quiet for a moment longer than it needed to. Then someone cleared their throat. I turned back to the guests. Dinner is ready. People moved. Chairs scraped. Conversations restarted. Softer at first, then normal. I took my seat. Across the table, the private equity partner leaned in. He's been telling people he represents you, that he's your advisor. I nodded. He isn't. She studied me. Do you have documentation? Yes, I said. She sat back. We should talk. Halfway through the main course, my phone buzzed. A text from my dad. You just made a big mistake. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my email and saw 3 new messages. One from a journalist who'd been forwarded a tip about a family dispute behind a major hospitality brand. One from a former business partner of my dad's responding to a message I'd sent weeks earlier saying he was willing to talk. And one from the private equity firm asking for a formal meeting, without my dad included. I looked up at the table. People were laughing, talking about projects, openings, staffing models. The room felt steady. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. I wasn't ready yet, not for the public part. But it was close, very close. The following morning, I woke before the sun, not from anxiety, but from habit. I had a system now. Every meeting, every document, every contact, meticulously tracked. Every receipt in the folder named, with my wedding date, had a purpose. Clarity, not vengeance. By 8 a.m., my assistant had forwarded the latest media inquiry. A journalist covering corporate leadership scandals had asked for a comment on a rumor about family interference in my business. The email was terse, curious, professional. I printed it out and added it to the folder. Then I opened a fresh page on my laptop. I wrote a single line. Public exposure, no embellishment. Everything else would be facts. The dinner in New York had shown me two things. First, that my father would continue to misrepresent reality if left unchecked. Second, that the people who mattered, the investors, the partners, the employees, would see the truth if it was presented cleanly, clearly, and without theatrics. By noon, I had arranged a press briefing. Not a flashy, overproduced event, but enough to allow anyone in the business community, including those my father might try to influence, to attend. Invitations went out under my name, signed simply Founder and CEO, Quiet Hospitality Group. I arrived at the venue, a modest gallery space converted into a small conference room, 2 hours early. The lights were soft, the microphones tested, the podium clear. Behind it, a single slide projected my company's name and logo. At 2:15 p.m., my father walked in. He hadn't been invited, but he had heard from someone, always someone, about the briefing. He approached the front row looking for familiar faces, probably expecting a mix of awe and deference. "Dad," I said, calm, measured, from the podium. "Thank you for coming," he smiled, uncertain. "Of course." I wanted to see everything firsthand. I gestured toward the first slide, which read, Company, Origin, and Growth Timeline. "Let's begin with the start," I said. Quiet Hospitality Group opened its first property in 2014. The loan was approved in March. Renovations began in July. Launch was in December. All financial documents, contracts, and approvals are in public record, or in this folder. I held up a slim binder. It was the same one from the NYC dinner, now expanded to include everything: emails, contracts, grants, photographs, corporate filings. I did not embellish. I did not raise my voice. Notably, no family member, including my father, co-signed, advised, or contributed financially to these ventures. A murmur ran through the room. Reporters leaned forward. Investors scribbled notes. My father's smile tightened. I clicked the remote. The next slide displayed screenshots, posts, LinkedIn messages, and emails where he claimed public credit for my work. The dates aligned with the timeline. The patterns were undeniable. This next section, I continued, highlights occasions where my father publicly represented involvement in company activities he did not participate in. Screenshots of the wedding, the ribbon cuttings, and social media posts appeared. Every claim is paired with original documentation, including confirmations from investors and staff. He opened his mouth. I waited.
I understand it's uncomfortable," I said.
But the facts remain! He waved a hand dismissively, trying to regain control. "You're making this look personal." "It isn't personal," I said. "It's professional, and it's public." I paused to let it sink in. The journalists were typing, investors whispering. Every statement he had made to mislead had been cross-verified. Every assistance he had claimed was now visible as absent. I turned the slide one last time. It displayed the current company valuation, $580 million, and highlighted the board members and investors with confirmations that none had received guidance or influence from him. Quiet Hospitality Group has grown through strategy, hard work, and partnerships that were earned, I said. Not inherited, not borrowed, not claimed by anyone else. The room was silent. My father's jaw had tightened. The laughter he often used to mask discomfort at previous family gatherings was gone. A reporter cleared their throat. "So you're saying all public claims by him about your company are inaccurate?" I nodded. "Exactly." He opened his mouth again, and I waited. No one interrupted me. The room was witnesses. The emails, the documents, the slides, they did the speaking. He swallowed. I'd like to conclude, I said. This company and my career will continue on facts, not narratives. Boundaries are important. Oh. Misrepresentation has consequences. My focus remains on growth, operations, and leadership, not managing myths or correcting unauthorized claims outside this room. No one laughed, no one gasped. The statement landed with precision. My father left shortly after, muttering under his breath. The reporters followed. A few took photos as he exited. Outside, the whispers began. Within hours, articles went live detailing the briefing, including screenshots and confirmations. By evening, I had messages from investors confirming trust. Employees wrote privately, expressing relief that the situation was clarified. The woman from the private equity group emailed, proposing a new meeting. She emphasized that my father would not be included. My phone buzzed once. A single message from my father. We need to talk. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I turned it face down, opened my laptop, and began reviewing expansion plans for the next quarter. Later that week, my mother called. He's shaken, she said. Yes, I said calmly. I imagine so. Do you feel guilty? I paused. No, I feel clarity. Boundaries were respected. The truth is public. That's enough. She was silent. Then you handled this, with grace. I handled it with facts, I said. The days that followed were quiet. My father's attempts at public claims dwindled. Invitations he assumed would include him were redirected. His social media posts became fewer and more carefully worded. Cautious. People who had once admired his confidence now saw hesitation. I focused on operations, expansion plans, staff development. The company grew, slowly, deliberately. One evening months later, I walked through one of our newly renovated hotels. The lobby smelled of fresh wood and polished stone. Guests checked in efficiently. Staff greeted them with warmth. Everything moved as it should. I stopped at the front desk, watched a young manager coordinate a large group booking flawlessly, and smiled. No one was claiming credit for this but the people who built it. I thought briefly of my father, now mostly silent, no longer trying to insert himself into my milestones. I felt nothing explosive, no thrill of revenge, no gloating. Just a quiet, steady satisfaction. I returned to my office, looked at the folder named with my wedding date, and archived it. The records were still there, still organized. The evidence remained. But it wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a map of lessons learned, boundaries established, and respect earned, not demanded, not begged for. And that was enough. I turned back to my desk, opened the next project plan, and began typing. The next chapter was already in motion, built on facts, patience, and quiet authority. No one could interrupt that. No one ever would again.